Many such cases.
Every such case, in fact. All right, all right. Ready when you are. Ready when you are.
Yeah?
I do have to apologize. I'm kind of overtired and like understimulated, and it's like
Understimulated?
Understimulated, yes. Because like, I don't know, it's like, shit, where is this? Can you take this further if?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like the feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the talks get you worked up and accelerate you, so then you don't sleep. So then you need Adderall the next day, which accelerates you further, so you get even less sleep the following night. It's like we're heading towards some kind of event horizon.
Just exactly, right? And what the end result of this is that like I have a lot of problems that nobody else has.
No, I think this is a pretty common problem here, actually.
No, it is.
Yes.
It is. Amongst
some aspects are unique.
This particular crowd, maybe.
Yeah. But the gene mod part, probably not.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. There are only problems that everyone has and problems that everyone will have in the future, but not everyone does yet. The future is not evenly distributed yet, as Gibson said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but the problem is that everybody has the background to this, right? Yeah. Like why it's harder and harder. The things are it's more and more difficult to sustain this kind of energy, right? Are pervasive, like myriad, right? Xenoestrogens in the water supply, psychopharmaceuticals in the water supply, genotoxic chemicals in almost everything that we touch.
Right, precisely. And then like, I don't know, it's like real like the proverbial frogs being like boiled alive. Like everything, like all the measures of like vitality and so on and so forth that we have are just going to the floor and in some cases through it.
Yeah.
And so like we just continually like shift around our goalposts around like what is healthy in order to like distract ourselves from the fact that everything is going to shit.
Right, and it degrades your cognitive ability to your ability to cognize it, both individually and at a social level. Like two examples. Like one is that the reference range for testosterone today does not even overlap with what it was for men in the 1930s. Like we're talking about the difference between 300 to 900 versus 1100 to 1300. So, but today, when you see you have normal testosterone, that doesn't even, it's below range, below reference range, like 100 years ago, but that doesn't even come up, right? It's just history, right?
And you can't think about this because you don't have the like direct experience of what it's like to have the testosterone of like a 20-year-old in the 1940s. Like,
yeah.
And so like you just can't think about this kind of like slow interminable biological decline at the like rate of these kinds of like.
Yeah, you don't know what it means not to be tired.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Not to be low T. And then the contrary example, right, or the dual example is nutritional content, right? The nutritional content of vegetables has declined anywhere from like 10 to 75% in the case of copper and zinc over the past 50 years. But the FDA facts that you see on the side are still based on vegetable content 50 years ago when they were originally defined. So you also don't know what it means to eat nutritional food.
We don't know.
No, you don't know.
But it's like it doesn't make any sense to like actively like, try and like run away from these things, right? Like the fucking like the chemicals in the water making the frogs get, like you can't like run away from this stuff. Like it's pervasive, it's fucking everywhere, right? And you will never, as like try as you might, you will never like find a way in which you can like avoid like ingesting like all of these toxins, right?
And the whole strategy of avoidance is itself an effect of this metabolic defeat, metabolic and cognitive defeat due to biological degradation, right? It's the ultimate expression. I'm going to leave civilization, abandon the highest products and powers of mankind, of life, technology, so far, because I have been defeated by their pathological effects. I am not capable of realigning them. I don't have that agency.
Right, precisely. And then like there must be like a way out, and the way to get out is to like use technology to solve like the problems of technology. And this is like precisely the issue that we find ourselves in. It's like we can't do more technology to deal with the problems that we already have. Like
right. Yeah, because like technology is an outgrowth and a new stratum of life, right? It is still a part of the same living system of life on this planet. And what it's missing is the feedback loops that would allow it to regulate itself with respect to pre-existing strata of organic life and human society as well. The problem of reinstituting those is an engineering problem. It is one that we are capable of solving with the same fundamental competencies that produced that technology in the first place, but it does require a change of attitude and philosophy.
Right, exactly. And and so it's like we have this like we need like a new thinking to like in order to like think our way out, because like the problems that we have stem from like slapdash band-aid solutions of just like, oh, like we found this like effect thing and we'll just treat the effect, but like there's no cause or concern for like what underlying like actually produced that effect.
Yeah, we found one molecule associated with aging. Let's just like maximize it.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It's like tiny brain thinking that has like no sort of underlying like philosophy of like what life is and like what it could be and what it should be.
Yep. Which is to say, it lacks teleology, an appreciation of teleology. Can you click me? Click. Yeah. So, teleology. Teleology is causal explanation by ends, purposes, goals, functions, and so forth, right? As opposed to mechanical causality, which moves only from the past to the future and the parts to the wholes. Instead, final causality or teleology is the effect of the projected end upon the present, the ability of the end to produce its own historical development. For biology, teleology really presents a quandary that's not present for the rest of natural science. Like for physics and chemistry, they invented the model of mechanistic causality, or of like sole reliance on mechanistic causality. You don't need to reason about the goals of an electron to understand it, or a gravitational field, or a molecule, an oxidation reaction. But with biology, they have no underlying philosophy that isn't mechanistic, right? That like can actually admit of a category of ends that have a causal effect in the world, a deterministic effect. But at the same time, like biology can't get by without using teleological language. Anytime you say like an organ has a function, an evolutionary adaptation is a means of doing something, like this cell is going to this place in order to do this, right? Even just like basic homeostasis, like the cell wants to maintain water homeostasis between the inside and the outside, right? It's always pursuing some kind of goal. And so this is a long-running tension within biology. Where was I going with this?
It's like the generalized conflict between like, you know, this sort of like extremely like mechanical like description of like the processes of life is not actually like pulling apart what the like underlying like life is, right? And this is like this tension is like everything that is wrong like with the life sciences today.
Yeah, good. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so this is what I really wanted to talk about to start with. It's a really startling example, a demonstration of this that makes it very clear, is something called Xenobots, which were the biological robots invented by Michael Levin and his lab. So what they are just clumps of heart and skin cells from a frog. No internal structure, like no mimicking of organs, no behavioral programming, anything like that, just a clump of cells. What they learn how to do on their own when set free like this, or this form of these cells, is to turn the pulsing of the heart cells, the cardiac muscle, into a means of locomotion. And they start using it to explore their environment. And if you put cells, in, like random other heart and skin cells in that environment, they'll absorb them until they've accumulated so many that they split in half, and now you have two Xenobots. They've reinvented self-replication, and this is not an evolved behavior. Like no heart cell has ever been used to locomote this way before. Nothing has ever divided this way before. But what is an evolved behavior is the drive towards the basic ends of life, to accumulate nutrients, to self-replicate, to explore its environment and master space, right? And these things, a completely novel entity that makes no natural biological sense, learn this and start just exhibiting this behavior on their own. Life finds a way. And that's them, Xenobots there. They also learn to cooperate. If you put a bunch of them together, they will like cooperate and form a swarm to move larger amounts of nutrients like into a central location to eat. None of this is trained or programmed behavior. Yeah, but so the other thing besides being biology is that this is a great example of technology, right, which has a different problem with teleology. With technology, we take teleology for granted. Everything we make for a purpose, or with like some end in mind, some vision. but we don't have a coherent, a thematized understanding of purposes across the different technological choices that we make and artifacts that we create. They all just proceed separately in their own way, and this lack of an overall teleology is part of what's how we've ended up here today.
And so there is actually one field of engineering that is kind of concerned with technologies like ultimate and final causes and seeks to assert itself towards a horizon in the end. And in fact, you might have heard of it. It's Urbit, right? Urbit, in as much as you can define what Urbit is the drive to it is the teleological computer. It is the the computer that computation itself agitates towards, and fundamentally, at the end of time, Urbit will exist, right? And this is what makes Urbit, part of what makes Urbit interesting is it's the way that it asserts itself from the future.
Which is manifest in most concrete and abstract form in Kelvin versioning. Kelvin zero, right? The fact that we are trying to figure out what it means to create a computer that never has to change again creates a virtual teleological horizon that organizes everything else towards it. What Urbit is the process of figuring out what Urbit can, what can reach Kelvin zero, right? And this teleological process guides everything, every programming decision, engineering decision made. And this is because Urbit explicitly has the entire field of computing technology and what it's for, and rebooting it in view, which is what all other technologists essentially are missing.
Right, and because Urbit as a technology takes its own teleology seriously, it's able to integrate with human teleology in a way that is friendly and hospitable and vitally important. And so this is kind of what we mean when we say something is oh, it's sort of Urbit adjacent, or it's kind of Martian. This is an example of a technology that takes its own telos and its own final causes and purpose seriously.
Yeah, and this is what's so extraordinary, is that this goes even beyond the field of engineering. The computing technology itself is the mere idea of Urbit, this teleological horizon, draws together a bunch of cultural strands, right? These are two examples, interesting examples of teleology, but within the world right now, over the past 10 years, we're seeing things converge from a number of lines, a lot of them in this building right now that have little to do necessarily with computing. One of defense distributed. Wait, can you click me? Oh yeah, here we go, great. So there's a unity right now, it seems, between decentralization and the reemergence of a global teleology, right? The process of creating a robust protocol that can exist anywhere and work anywhere, the exit from centralized institutions, the realization of the failure of all of these scientific disciplines and build new ones. Oh yeah, and then another great example of this sort of teleological structure is SpaceX in particular. Where you have one final goal, right, which is to colonize, to get to Mars and be able to live there permanently, right? And this creates not just one company, a rocket company, but a cascade of other things. You know what the inputs are, the dependencies of this goal, and so you build companies that manifest them in a way that is for profit here on Earth. And so just the horizon of Mars as a goal also gets us electric vehicles on Earth. It gets us the Boring Company building tunnels and, uncrowding our cities and that sort of thing. Battery technology, all of this, and just the imposition of a significantly powerful final goal reorganizes everything else around it.
All right. However,
yeah,
they do they face a certain kind of enemy, and so there are an allied array of a variety of forces that kind of seek to abolish and extinguish any kind of teleological character wherever they can find it. Genza, Fauci, Google is fucking daycare for engineers so that they don't fucking go and it's abolishing the telos, all of the talented engineer to go and build something, and instead shuffling them into bullshit daycares so that they're not a threat to Google's bottom line.
Yeah, the abolition of competition, abolition of decentralization is always attempting to vacuum telos out of everything.
Right, it's the vacuum telos, it's the vacuum life, and vital energy is sucked right out of it. These people are not your friends.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Yes, and so two things like the almost imminent biotechnology revolution, long promised, now finally actually happening, and the accompanying discourse of transhumanism in all of its sort of ateleological valuelessness that it inherited from secular humanism, so-called, right, which has no overriding purpose or foundation, but except the latest liberal list of human rights, right? There's no other central meaning to it. Transhumanism is the same, right? It's like the plastic surgery clinic brochure of ideologies. I want to be smarter and have cybernetic legs and live longer and be pretty, right, etc. But the thing is that this ideology is a key battleground because right now it doesn't go any particular way. But if we don't fight for it to give it an overriding telos, it will end up serving the anti-teleological forces. So it is vitally necessary that we develop better ideology that does have a teleological character.
And the first place to fight over this is this guy, who you might have heard of.
Exhibit A.
If you don't know who this is Brian Johnson. He's this he's very classically born from the whole fiat payment rails money that was just sloshing around everywhere in the early web, and has decided to take all of his dirty fiat money and use it to not die, in his own words. And so it's interesting because this it has no teleological sort of horizon or impulse. It's not looking for any sort of purpose other than to not die. However, it's also not foreclosed to the notion of a telos. And so it's you can fight to put these kinds of sort of ideas and put a purpose and a telos behind them.
It's just worth noting also is a set piece, right, is just that you could really not ask for a firmer lesson in the danger to the human teleological structures that we have than to use your son as a blood boy and an Instagram prop, right, in your pursuit of living forever, right? Boomer ossification could have no right,
but it's important that we don't have any issue. Sorry, we don't have any issue with blood boys.
Yes. Yeah, we don't know who needs to hear this, but we have no problem with blood boys. Just yes. Yes, right. Right. So the question is, what is okay, so Johnson has a monomania for life extension and for anything that superficially phenomenally resembles youth, right? He doesn't even just do the regular biohacking stuff. He also gets plastic surgery, right? He has a monomania about this that manifests in a variety of disconnected domains. Goodhart's law famously states, right, any measure that becomes a target ceases to be a good measure. Right? There are alternative types of target, right? This sort of ill-defined or extremely too well-defined target of longevity. For example, athletes on steroids or bodybuilders on steroids are not really considered a sterling example of healthy behavior or responsible use of biotechnology. But at the end of the day, the pursuit of beauty or winning or athletic excellence is a more meaningful goal, so to organize your life and your usage of biotechnology and of your body around, than this, whatever the fuck this is.
Right. And writ large, it's easy to see where this goes and what happens with this sort of indefinite and kind of ill-conceived and reckless approach to life extension. Where this goes is the infinite and unparalleled exacerbation of the boomer problem. And so this has already exceeded any kind of putative the demographic of all the people who were born in the baby boom. It's now a transcendental problem that is infecting everything. Right.
The more things accelerate, the more the tendency of people becomes to defensively ossify, and this is exacerbated by the biological degradation, right? Loss of neuroplasticity, loss of the energy to keep changing, to keep up with acceleration.
Loss of this vital energy, the ossification of everything, nostalgia, fucking Marvel bullshit, landlord economics. It's all freezing over and stultifying. This is the boomer problem, writ large, is the giving up of the ability of life to change.
So to this, we oppose the perpetual zoomer, Transcendental youth. Because youth isn't like having clear skin, right? It's not just like reckless behavior, getting morning wood every day or anything like that, right? Like youth is the time of becoming. It means you are not yet what you are going to be. You are in the window in which like teloi ends impose themselves on you, right? Teleology structures itself as plasticity and criticality. I can go.
So like, like plasticity is like the responsiveness like to change, and like in this way it like militates like against like the boomer ossification. And so like like what you need to be like able to sort of in some sense like have is like the ability like to adapt in order to like oppose the future where like we are all buried under like billions of tons of like boomer biomass like slowly putrefying like as like life itself, like the vital spark of life itself is extinguished.
You really had to get the boomer biomass line out, didn't you?
Yeah, I really did.
Yes, but yeah, so plasticity and criticality, right? The critical developmental periods are a series of time-limited windows in early life that humans go through, about 7 of them, depending on your definition, between infancy and the last one closes in your mid-20s. And so it's a time of unique plasticity, unique in the sense that each one is also different. So like one of the earliest ones you go through is the one in which it's possible to learn a language without formal instruction and acquire perfect pitch. And once that window closes, it's over. Puberty is another one. So this is a time of like radical openness, like to the things that you can learn, to being trained by your environment, right, that occurs with plasticity. So as it turns out,
yeah, like we don't want to get too deep into the technical weeds because this is not a technical talk. This is not a like biosciences convention, and like I kind of don't want to give away the like highly monetizable info hazards that we've like kind of uncovered. However, we can say with like a reasonable amount of certainty that it is like possible to like reopen like at least 2 different like kinds of like critical period, right? And like this is like
adult, yeah,
and like 2 different kinds of like the ability of like the human subject to like reintegrate itself and to like change and adapt to its environment in like new and novel ways.
Yes, we've successfully experimentally induced a critical period in adults past the last period of normal critical epigenetic periods. The point of which is this is a re-youthening process. Compared to like just eternal life, right? Like longevity, slow ossification that drags out forever, whatever its superficial appearance may be, whether you look young or not, right? This is the real thing, right? It is actually restoring you to the window of risk and opportunity to redefine who you are and be someone new, actually grapple with like the changing circumstances of accelerating time.
Right, and so it's like in like retaining like this ability like to change and to change in like meaningful ways, you can have like a genuine and like a philosophically grounded kind of like infinite youth, right? Because that like youth itself is like kind of exists in the shadows like of the like necessity of that change to like adapt yourself into the environment. So if you can put yourself in these kinds of like hyperplastic, extremely critical like periods, then you can perpetually like not have the boomer problem apply to you. Like it's
Yeah, and it poses an entirely new set of challenges for how to think about life, right? If you can do this on demand, like when do you do it? For what reason? What prompts you to do it? And like how do you manage the potential consequences of becoming someone new? And this is the research program that we're inviting people to embark upon, like whether in practice using it or just like thinking about this problem. If your chronological life is of indefinite extension, and you have an arbitrary ability to periodically renew, to iterate, like your ability to accelerate and be someone, how do you think about the future? How do you make those choices?
Right. How do you think about you? How do you like? Because it's like if you have like don't have any like social like cultural like paradigm around like what it means to like have the second puberty. It's like if you have like weird stuff going on in your life as a result of the second puberty, there's no sort of like cultural, like social sort of like implements for you to like fall back on in terms of like understanding this. And so it's kind of
historically, puberty is like treated as a combination of sacred and forbidden, right? In most cultures, have some of the most intense taboos that we have, besides incest and cannibalism, are around like the treatment of adolescence and the distinction between adults and children, and the preserving of a category in between. Which can mean, like, in some tribes, like social separation, shamanic rituals. I mean, like, in cases, they kill off a significant percent of adolescents because of the trials that you have to go through in order to control the explosive potential of this, like, period of plasticity and vitality. And that's what we need to reinvent.
Yes.
But outside of the normal progression of generations that we have now, entirely from whole cloth, more or less.
Right, and so like the entire like, Perpetual Zuma project is also like adjacent to the like exploration like of understanding like of what it means to be a perpetual like Zuma. And like we don't quite know what that is yet. Like much like Urbit is like militating towards its own telos and discovering itself in the process, we are trying to do like much the same thing of like invent a new kind of human and then like understand like what like necessarily that new kind of human implies.
Yeah. And I mean, a significant part of this also in terms of connecting, let's get to like the riffing about other biotech stuff part.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, a big experience that I've had over the past couple of years, or the past year and a half, like since meeting Liam, is the feedback loop between optimizing your physiology and stack and having more cognitive bandwidth and energy to read more biotech and biology papers to further optimize your physiology and stack. This just goes round and round and round in fucking circles in an extraordinary a spiral upwards. And this like combination of like the social, that this is like involved with my peers who are doing the same thing, my best friend here, the epistemic aspect, epistemological meaning the study of knowledge. I don't know if I'm supposed to like footnote these things. Of acquiring information, and then the improvement in your physiology linking together. This is the kind of effect that we're trying to achieve at a social scale, at an individual scale, with any kind of biotechnology that you might interact with, an optimization spiral.
And it's precisely like interesting to see like precisely like how easy it is. Like once you have this, getting the whole like feedback loop started is like a huge bitch. But like once you have this going, it's like so easy to see like how like your attention towards like your own biology like can manifest itself in like more like and faster like vital impulse, just like kind of bursting at the seams almost. And it's like it is a hard thing to describe to people because of that like sort of extreme intensification and like acceleration that happens like once you kind of really get that flywheel going.
Yeah, and once it's going, it becomes possible, it actually feels practical and viable to envision things like inventing synthetic organisms that eat microplastics, or even modifying yourself to eat plastic, or to absorb the microplastics in your body and metabolize them, which is basically the only viable solution to the microplastics problem, because that's the one thing that there is nowhere on Earth to escape, and no part of your body either. It gets into the cell nucleus, and its effects are extremely poorly understood.
Yeah, and like part of this is like you have this like flywheel going, and then like you can start to like think about like the problems like of the environment. You can like think about the toxicity that's embedded in your environment in a way that is clear and is not kind of like clouded by your own like lack of cognition and like misadjusted sort of like teleological attitudes towards the world.
And it's this kind of vital takeoff is what looping back to earlier, what I said, that we needed the feedback loops between technology, human society, or the cultural stratum, and the organic stratum of the body to be implemented. This is what that looks like, right? In the same way that the antiviral spiral down, like lower body temperatures, lower testosterone, lower nutrient value, is like the effect of one thing of cancer, effectively, like a new stratum cannibalizing the others and then killing itself, inevitably. The opposite is also true. Just as much as we've spiraled down precipitously over the last century, physiologically, this is what the re-implementation or the reintegration of an overall teleology into the relationship between life and technology looks and feels like, is this takeoff that starts with a couple of people in one place, optimizing individually, and turns into the real possibility of renovation across the planet. Sounds like a good place to end. Okay. Right on the money.